All right, everyone, good afternoon. We are now at the noontime hour, so I can say afternoon. I'm Chris Barnes. I'm with the Office of Early Childhood, and we're here today to give some information on the School Readiness Assistance Program. You all have been uh, made aware of a lot of changes that have been coming down. And so today, what we want to do is provide a little bit of information to remind everyone about some of the changes that have come effective October 1, and then also talk about what is happening between now and November, um, and really flesh out some of the questions that we've been hearing on our end about uh, co-payments and how those are applied, how school readiness assistance works with the quality payments, all of those different things that you have that we see are happening now effective October 1. So we want to use this time to be able to flesh out some of those procedures and parts of the policy changes that are made effective October 1. So let's get right into it. All right, so as you know, the school readiness assistance changes took place beginning October 1, and we made some changes to focus on prioritizing access, affordability of care, and sustainability of the system. And we're going to get into something in the next few minutes that's going to talk to you about the sustainability aspect. But what we looked at was looking at all of the rates that we're paying and moving those rates back to the maximum, those rates at the 75th percentile. And we've received a lot of questions about what this 75th percentile means of the state market rate. Part of CCDF, which is the program funding grant which we receive that pays for school readiness funding. That's the Child Care Development Block Grant. We have in that the School Readiness Assistance Program. We've got federal pre-K slots. We have the ABC infant toddler subsidies. All of that are funded through our CC DBG grant. And so, in that requirement, we are required under that program to do a state market rate survey. And that's done every 3 years to determine really what are the rates of providers out there in the state. And so we get all the information. We do that with one of our providers. UAMS actually helps us to generate that. And then we utilize that information to determine what our rates are going to be set to. The 75th percentile is not 75% of the state rate, it is the percentile. So if you imagine what 50th percentile is, 50th percentile is the middle rate of everyone in the state that they would charge. That's about the middle rate. So 75th percentile actually means that we are paying, if we had 100 providers lined up, we are paying at or better than 75 of those 100 providers with our state rate. And so everything reverted back to that rate that was assigned as part of our state market rate survey. We did have some outliers in there. The outliers being some portions of Northwest Arkansas, particularly Washington and Benton counties, who are substantially higher than the market rate survey suggested for that 75th percentile. So they have another rate, and we'll get into those rates in just a few minutes. What we tried to do is make sure everyone was kind of on a single reimbursement rate level, and everything is structured that way for families, providers in the state. And then we could provide other incentives and rewards for quality in ways that we are moving forward with some of the things that we want to put in place in the future. We also updated co-payments, and we will get into those in a few minutes. But they're on an incorporating sliding scale based on family income. So
Chris, you froze up.
Can you hear me now, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so uh, I'm going to turn off my video so that way maybe that will allow me some stability. So the co-payments were set on an incorporating sliding scale based on family income. And if you are in the lower levels of income, you would not have a co-payment for anyone that is any child that is before kindergarten. And then we have varying degrees of co-payments that increase as the income levels increase. We also provide a weekly reimbursement that we'll be doing that is instead of paying daily, we'll be paying that as a weekly reimbursement. Next slide, please. Okay. So many of you probably listened to Secretary Leva give his testimony to the Early Childhood Subcommittee. And in that subcommittee's information, he stated where we were as far as our funding. And there was a lot of question about, how we got
Okay.
to this place, how the money was there, etc. But what I wanted to show you was where we are currently in our funding. You can see there in the red that is the amount of funding that is currently forecast at the rates that are at our former rates. That's kind of where we are set. So we're spending, looks like in July, about $15 million per month. And then we spent about 11 million the next month. Then we went up to about 13 million. So you can see there's a pretty high level of difference between the child care forecast that's at the current rate and then what is available for CCDF funding. That green is what we actually receive in funds attributed to providing direct services through school readiness assistance. You can see that there was a little drop there. It went basically down to nothing in September, and that is because we were notified in the fourth quarter that our overall system amount that we get from our grant from CCDF would be reduced because they believe that we have a lower percentage of poverty within our state. And we are trying to look at that now and determine how that information happened because we do not believe that our poverty is actually decreasing. We believe our poverty is increasing our state. And so we're trying to look at that and figure out what exactly happened there and see if we can recoup some of that money. But the fact remains, the budget is set for about $6.5 million per month. And so you can see just in this graph alone that we are spending well above what we are bringing in. And there was a lot of reasons for this occurring. There was a lot of COVID money that was put into the system that allowed increased access. And since those fundings were there, and when those funds removed, what was only left paying for everything was CCDF. And so that is why we have a fill of people in the system receiving assistance, but we have now only one limited funding source it's paying from. So we had to make some very difficult decisions with regard to what we could do as far as subsidizing care based on the amount of funding that we had available. Next slide, please. So these are the updated SRA rates as you are very much aware of. These took place beginning October 1, and you can see there's a statewide rate and then a Benton, Washington rate. So if you're in Benton, Washington counties, you have a little elevated rate there for infant, toddler, pre-K, and school-age children, both full-time and part-time. The part-time rates are set to half of the full-time rates, which is a change also from the former system. We also do provide and continue to provide special needs rates. We have they really collapse into one rate with special needs families and special needs one qualifying for typical rates. But then we've got a 40% add-on for families that are in special needs two and special needs three categories. And those are determinations that are made through OEC. So when a family applies for assistance and they claim to have a child with special needs, we review that documentation and we make the determination of whether they qualify under one of those categories. We also have weekend and nighttime rates, which are set at a standard 10% increase of the typical rates, which is really what constitutes the current difference in the rates. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so a lot of questions have come up about family copayments. So I thought we would spend some time today really talking about what family copayments are and how we approach those. So we've had copayments in our state for years, according to the historical system. They've been pretty minimal copayment amounts, so much so that providers have even commented to us that they do not really even collect the copayment amounts because it's more of a hassle than it is to just offset that. But we have had a copayment structure in our state for years. Now the copayment structure is going to be a little more advanced than what we have had. The updated copayments are really meant to ensure that more families can access the care. And so what we try to do is look at what the family has as far as their need, but also how we can allow them to have some amount of funding that they utilize to have some responsibility for subsidizing their own care. And so this way, our child care is trying to be available and affordable for as many families as we possibly can. So the sliding scale that you can see is based on a family income, the age of care. So if we have infants, toddlers, pre-K and school age, our emphasis is really placed on providing as much support in infant and toddler care as possible. So you'll see lower degrees of copayment at the infant toddler level than you would at the pre-K and school aged level. And then full-time and part-time care, we really focus on full-time care as being a predominant factor. So you can see right there with the annual income, a family of two with an SMI, a 40% SMI, which is the state median income, a family of two, that's $24,556. That's for a family of two. And I can go up to a family of five at 41,000. Anyone that is at that 40% rate or below will not pay a copayment from the state for any children before kindergarten. So if they are infant, toddler, pre-K, there is not a copay that's going to be assigned if you are in one of those. That's the poverty level. There's not going to be a copayment assigned. However, if you're at the 60 or the 85% SMI levels, you will have some degree of copayment. There will still be a school readiness assistant payment provided, but it may not be as much because your income level is higher. So for families that have that highest income, we're going to give less of a assistance payment, and they will be responsible for more of that care. So families that are working in school or above the poverty level will pay a copayment on a sliding scale based on their income and the age of their child. But again, anyone who is at or below the 40%, the 40% SMI will not have to pay a copayment from the state. They will be eligible for the full state maximum rate for any children that they have before kindergarten. Let's go to the next slide. So you can kind of see that copay structure that's right there. You can see the daily copay amounts, that 40% SMI for infant, toddler, pre-K is not there. You see the daily amounts. There's zero in the copay column, but you also see that on school-aged full-time, they do have to pay a copayment, $6.20, which is a 20% copay of the $31 that they would have to pay and receive in the state rate. So they would essentially receive $24.80, and then they would have to pay $6.20 per day to be able to qualify for receiving that assistance. Now, school age, you can imagine there's not a lot of full-time school age care that's going out except for certain pockets of time, like when school is out of session or during summers. So that's when the copay amounts will increase for those families, is during those points in time. You can see, though, that for above 60% SMI, you can see that there could be up to $21.70 per day, and there's a higher responsibility in copayment than there is actual in receiving them receiving the assistance. Of the $31 for school age on the copay, they would be paying $21.70 of the $31. So they would be getting less in assistance than what they would be getting in their copayment. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make sure that everyone has access to the available funds that we have, as many people that can access as possible, while also maintaining zero copays for families in poverty and increasing cost sharing responsibility, affordability with families. All right, next slide. So you can see this is kind of pointing out the family seeking full-time infant care who are earning 40% to 60% of the monthly state median income. They would contribute $7.20 to their daily rate of care. Next slide. Here's another one. Families seeking full-time pre-K care who are earning greater than 60% of the SMI would pay $13.20 of the $33 rate. So that's a higher amount that they would pay. Okay, next slide. All right, so in all of these things that have changed, we've tried to do things to support families to make sure that they have the information in as timely a way as possible. So there are some things that we have put on our website and sent out to families to assist them with this. So let's go to those. So on our website, you can see we've got the school readiness assistance frequently asked questions. We also have the letter to families regarding SRA changes, which we announced to them and then sent that out to everyone. And then we have a letter to families that was effective October 1, which kind of talked to them about the family payment calculator, as well as reminding them about the copays so that they would be aware of those changes that are happening. Next slide. In addition to that, we also put out our SMI monthly income chart. So that's available for both providers and for families so that they could see where they fall in relation to the state median income. We also provided the SRA rates and sliding fee scale charts that were broken down by statewide full-time, statewide part-time, Benton and Washington full-time, and Benton and Washington part-time. One thing that we did add pretty recently was, because we had a calculator up there before to be able to assist families with determining what their copayment would be, but we also have now an authorization worksheet for families, which is a step-by-step guide for families to be able to access their authorizations within the SRA portal. So we're going to go into that and talk about that for the next few minutes. Next slide. So the authorization worksheet for families, which is currently on our website, is just a guide that provides families with their ability to go step by step into the school readiness assistance portal and be able to find those authorizations. Providers, you all have access already to the authorizations through the portal, but families now have access to that information in the portal as well. And so what they would do is they would log into the SRA Citizen Portal with their credentials. That would be the email address that they use to apply for assistance, and then that password and everything to be able to get into that system. And then once they're inside, they would locate their applications by clicking on the My Applications part of that homepage dashboard. You can see I've highlighted it there with the arrow, and so that way people know how to click on that. Next slide. And then step 3, they would click on the View Authorizations icon of the application they're viewing. So once they see that, they can see that little View Authorizations icon. They would click on that. Let's go next slide. And then you could see that there is a little icon whenever they see their authorization. They can go to that little icon and they can click that, and it would print for them. It would show up as a downloadable document that they can get. It's a PDF, so they can then print it and they can view it. It's important for families to understand, and this is something that providers can help with and local leads can help with. You can notice that there is a start and end date for the authorization. So if there is an authorization that is not current, then that is no longer the authorization that you'll want. You will want to have one that is a current. And so the ones that are out there right now are authorized for October 1 through October 31st. So that's the authorization that is in there currently. So if they click on that, they'd be able to access that current authorization. Next slide. And so when they view the authorization, many of you know this because you receive those authorizations all the time. You are experts at being able to read these. But what it does provide for families is important information about what the expected contribution will be from the state, as well as the amount that they would be expected to provide in support of the care that they receive from the state. So you can see the case demographic information is there, the county in which the child is receiving services, the age type you can see is preschool, the care type is down below, full-time care. Facility information is also provided for that, so that's where we would be expected to send payments to for the child. Then you see a few varying columns that are underneath the worksheet portion of the authorization. You've got parent fee, and that is the percent of the copayment that families would be expected to provide. Then you have what is called the daily SRA amount, which includes that activity fee of 50 cents. So that amount is what providers would be expected to receive from SRA for that child per day. And then the daily case head amount is the family copay amount. So that would be the expected amount that a family would be expected to pay for that child for each day for that service. And that's for the state copayment amount. Now we're going to get into some questions about what does copay mean for this, because I may charge more. So we'll talk about that. But this is the state copayment amount. So if you look at that $9.90 and that $23.10, you're going to come up with a rate of $33. And that is the preschool rate for Faulkner County for full-time care. So that's how that is derived. That 30% amount is 30% of the $33 amount. That's the state rate, which is $9.90. And then that's subtracted from the $33 amount to end up with the $23.10 amount that the family or that the provider would receive as the state's contribution to care. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. All right, so here are some resources to support providers in navigating the SRA changes. All right, so we've had some things that we've given you all to help you with instituting these changes. Next slide. So again, we have the school readiness assistance frequently asked questions. We had the letter to providers regarding the SRA portal closure and transition timelines, which gives kind of like the outline of everything that we've done as far as direct services payments. We also provided the letter for November, for effective November 1 on rates and copays, which talks about the quality enhancement payments available to providers through the month of October to support providers' financial stability. That's something that Secretary Leva commented that he would want to put in place for the month of October to provide to assist providers uh, with supporting them through this transition. It's very important that providers understand that we want to support you and we are doing everything we can to ensure that you have support that you need to make through so that you can make some decisions on what needs to occur in a timely manner. Also, we know we've got things that we have to do on our end to ensure program stability. And we are also sitting with no authorization currently from the U.S. Department or from the U.S. government because we do not have a continuing resolution approved. So there's a lot of things happening right now, a lot of things that we're trying to keep tabs on. But we do have funding that is going to be provided through November for quality payments to be able to provide for you. And so we will talk about what that looks like and how we're calculating those. We did provide you the quality enhancement payment calculator so that you can kind of see what that would be when you put that information in and what you would be expected to obtain for a child for a certain amount of care. We also provided some calculations, some examples of how those calculations are done. So we're going to go through those now so that way you can see exactly how those are applied. Next slide. All right, so let's talk about the quality enhancement payments. So, as you know, Secretary Leva said that we would provide quality enhancement payments through the month of October. So these payment amounts will be the difference between what were the legacy rates, the rates that we used to have, and the new updated rates for providers. So if you were a level 5 provider in Better Beginnings and you were accustomed to receive, let's just say, $60 for infant care, you would have the difference between that state rate and that infant care rate that you had as a quality enhancement payment. The quality enhancement payments are going to be issued weekly and separately from regular school assistance reimbursements. We say separately, but there is a possibility that some of those may come at the same time because we're trying to process these as quickly as possible for all of you to ensure that you have as much stability as possible. So we're trying to process these quickly for you all. That way you can get the regular rate reimbursement as well as the quality enhancement payments. Hopefully, we are going to be able to provide those at the same time. But if not, it may come separately and just a very slight delay. The family co-payments will not be affected by these payments and should be based on the new updated rates for providers. So families are receiving responsibility for co-payments. So we're going to walk through some examples of how that happens. Next. So here's an example of how we would calculate this quality enhancement payment. Here's an infant receiving full-time care at a Better Beginnings Level 3 child care center in Craighead County with a family income that is 50% of the state median income. So there's some information you can see here that we've put into this graph. Our SRA assigned daily rate for this type of care for an infant in Craighead County is $36. That's the state new rate that we have assigned. An assigned copay for this family, because they are at 50% SMI, so they are above that 40%, would be $7.20 per day. So the adjusted SRA daily rate paid to a provider would be $28.80. So of that $36, you would receive $28.80 for that child and that family. So you would be expected to charge the $7.20 to that family to recoup the full $36 amount. So now the quality enhancement payments come into play for you during this month. And you can see the previous Better Beginnings daily rate for a level 3, Better Beginnings level 3 center would be $56 for an infant receiving full-time care in Craighead County. So what we would do is we would look at the difference between that $56 amount on the previous Better Beginnings daily rate and the SRA assigned daily rate of $36, and we would get your daily quality enhancement payment, and that would be $20. So 56 minus 36 is $20. So the total daily amount paid to a provider for this child would be the adjusted SRA daily rate plus the daily quality enhancement payment. So of that $56 amount, you would receive $48.80 per day on that child, and you would be expected to bill the family $7.20 per day. So let's go to the next slide. Here's another example. Here's a toddler receiving full-time care at a Better Beginnings Level 5 Child Care Center in Washington County with a family income at 65% SMI. So there you have the daily rate of $41. You have the assigned copay that you would be charging to the family based on that 65% SMI. That'd be $12.30 per day. So your adjusted SRA daily rate that's paid to the provider is $28.70. So that amount is what we would pay you from the daily rate. The previous Better Beginnings daily rate is $60. So that $60 minus the $41 leaves you with a daily quality enhancement payment of $19. So the $19 plus the $28.70 gives you the total amount of $47.70 that we would pay to the provider for the quality enhancement plus the adjusted SRA daily rate. So you'd be expected to bill $12.30 per day to the families, and you would get $47.70 per day for that child, and that would add up to that $60 amount. Next example. Okay, so here's a preschooler with special needs SN2 designation receiving full-time care at a Better Beginnings Level 4 Child Care Center in Faulkner County with a family income of 39% SMI. So this SRA daily assigned rate for that child receiving special needs for full-time care in the state is now $46.20. There is not an assigned copay charged to that family because they are below the 40% SMI. So you would receive the full adjusted SRA daily rate to provider is the full amount, the full rate. Now your previous Better Beginnings daily rate was $65 for this child. So your daily quality enhancement payment would be the difference between the $65 and the $46.20, which would be $18.80. So you would be expected to receive the full amount of what you would have received, which would be $65 for that child per day. Next example. I'm trying to give lots of examples that kind of run the gamut of different care types and different Better Beginnings levels. So here we have a school-age child receiving part-time care at a Better Beginnings Level 2 Child Care Center in Drew County with a family income that is 43% SMI. So for a part-time care, For a school-age child, it would be half of what the full-time rate would be. So it's 15.50 because that full-time rate is $31. So the assigned daily rate for this child would be $15.50. You can see that there's a copay that would be charged by the providers of the family because that family is above the 40% SMI, so they would receive a 50% copay here, which is $7.75, and you would receive $7.75 as an adjusted SRA daily rate that's paid to you as the provider. But the previous Better Beginnings daily rate was $20.50. So what we would do is we would pay you the difference between the $20.50 and the $15.50 for your daily quality enhancement payment, which would be $5. So when you add up the adjusted SRA rate of $7.75 and the daily quality enhancement payment of $5, you end up with $12.75 that is paid to the provider, and you would be expected to charge $7.75 to the family. Next example. Here is an infant receiving weekend care at a Better Beginnings Level 6 Child Care Center in Garland County, where the family income is 80% SMI. So the daily assigned rate is $39.60 for weekend care. We have an assigned copay there of $11.88 that the family would have to pay, that's charged by the provider to the family. So your adjusted SRA daily rate would be $27.72. Your previous Better Beginnings daily rate for a level 6 provider for weekend care for an infant would be $80. So that difference between the $80 and the new SRA assigned daily rate is $39.60. And so the daily and quality enhancement payment would be $40.40. That added to the adjusted SRA daily rate is $68.12. So the $68.12 is what you would be expected to receive per day on that child, and you would be expected to charge $11.88 to the family as their copayment. Next one. This is the last example on this one. So here we have a toddler receiving full-time care at a Better Beginnings Level 2 Child Care Center in Benton County, and the child is in foster care. Okay, so the daily assigned SRA rate is $41. You notice that there is no copayment assigned because this is a foster care child and copayments are waived for foster care children. So the adjusted SRA daily rate paid to the provider is $41. The previous Better Beginnings daily rate was $44. So you would receive a $3 quality enhancement payment, which would give you the $44 total for the full amount of care that you were accustomed to receiving in the past. Okay, so next slide. So the quality enhancement payment calculator that we have available on the website helps you to be able to walk through all of these types of things, just like I did for you in each of these examples. For any child that you need to kind of figure out what am I going to be receiving? How much am I going to be receiving? And many of you have been utilizing the calculator. I've been seeing lots of people on there trying to utilize that. And so I feel like that has been a useful tool for you all to be able to estimate the payments that should be coming to you. Again, I cannot stress enough that the quality enhancement payments are scheduled currently through the month of October. So come November 1, these are not slated to continue. But you can use the calculator to put in your daily ADE amount from the authorization worksheet, the child's age, the rate type, the site's daily rate, whether the center is located in Benton, Washington County, and then the Better Beginnings level. And that will take care of providing you with an estimate of what you would be expected to receive as well as charge families. All right, next slide. All right, so one of the questions that we have received has been in relationship to the maximum charge amounts for families. You know that when we instituted the rate changes effective October 1, we at that time said in the new provider agreement that you would have that 15% cap removed as part of that new agreement. That is true beginning November 1, since we now have the uh, quality enhancement payments that we're giving you, that 15% rate still continues to apply. So let's kind of talk about what this really means, because I know a lot of people have gotten questions about whether the state copayment amount is included in this provider copayment. Providers can charge families more than the amount provided by the state rate, but you cannot charge more than the difference between the state rate and what you would expect to pay for a private pay that you charge your families as a provider. This is what we call the provider copayment, and it's different than the state copayment. So through October 31st, you cannot charge more than 15% beyond the state rate amount, including the quality, if the provider's private pay rate is higher than the state rate. The 15% does not include the state copayment amount. That is an additional amount. That's the state copayment. All right. Now, beginning November 1st, this is going to change because you can charge more than 15%, but you cannot charge more than the difference between the state rate amount and the private pay rate charged by the provider. Okay, so let's walk through some examples of what this would look like. Next slide. Here I have an example right here of an infant. I went back to that same one that we had. The infant receiving full-time care at a Better Beginnings Level 3 Child Care Center in Craighead County with a family income of 50% SMI. The provider's private pay amount is $60 per day. So you can see right there that SRA assigned rate is $36. The SRA assigned copay is $7.20. That's the state's copay. So the adjusted rate for the SRA daily rate to providers is $28.80. So you'd be getting $28.80 and you'd be expected to charge $7.20 to the family. Your previous Better Beginnings rate was $56. So you have a daily quality enhancement payment of $20. So the amount you would receive as a provider would be $48.80 of the $56 amount that you would be accustomed to receive. But let's say that this provider is charging $60 a day for their rates for private pay families. So now you can see the difference between that provider's daily rate for private families is $60. The previous Better Beginning daily rate was $56. So you would be able to charge a provider copayment amount of $4. And that's in addition to the $7.20 amount that is there on the SRA assigned copayment. So all in all, you would be able to charge $11.20 to the family for care that's attributed to that $60 amount for private pay families. So you get $48.80 from the state, and then the family would be responsible for $11.20 per day. All right, next slide. Here we have the same example, but it's provided at $65 per day. So you can see everything remains the same through the total daily amount paid to provider is $48.80. Then you see that provider daily rate for private pay families is $65. So, but that $65 is outside of that 15% because the 15% of $56 is actually $8.40. So $8.40 is what we would be able to charge. And so the amount of money that is charged to the families is $15.60. Well, when you add $48.80 together with $15.60, you end up with $64.40. So you are going to have to take a 60-cent cut for that rate because you have to maintain the 15% max on the overage on the provider copayment amount. But notice you are going to charge the $15.60, which is higher than 15% because of the state copayment amount. So remember, a provider copayment is different than a state copayment, but you will be collecting both of those to help offset the amount of money that you would be expected to receive to meet the full rate. All right, let's go to the next one. Look at this at November 1 example. So beginning November 1, the 15% amount is gone. You can see here though, the rate is the same, except we no longer have those quality enhancement payments. So the SRA assigned daily rate is $36. There's a copayment of $720. So your adjusted SRA daily rate paid to the provider is $28.80. And so you would receive $28.80 for that child per day. Your daily rate for private pay families is $60. So you would be able to charge the difference between the $60 and the $36 SRA assigned daily rate, which would be $24. So the amount you would be expected to charge a family in this instance would be $31.20 per day. So you're able to charge beyond. If you're still charging private pay families $60, you're able to still charge up to that amount. But you would have to do that as a provider copayment amount. All right, next one. Same thing would apply for a $65 a day private pay for families. You would still receive $28.80 for that school readiness assistance payment, that contribution from the state, and then you would be expected to recoup the $7.20 state assigned copay, plus anything that's over that $36 that you charge to private pay families. So in this instance, it would be $29 because it's the difference between the $65 and the $36. So the $29 plus the $720 is $36.20 that you would charge families per day for that care, and they would receive $28.80 as assistance to offset the amount of the private pay would receive. All right, so I know we threw a lot of math at you with a lot of different things that are going on, but we wanted to really explain to you the differences between these copays and letting you know that as providers, you can charge above that state rate for your private pay. You cannot charge a rate that is different to SRA families than what you charge private pay. It can't be higher than that. You can choose to charge lower if you want to, but you can't choose to pay higher than you pay your private pay families. Next slide. All right, so moving on to reviewing the child to staff ratio requirements. So just a reminder on this, because a lot of the Better Beginnings levels require you to have certain ratios in place to ensure quality in childcare facilities. Remember that has been waived, so providers can choose to maintain or adjust their ratios as long as they remain in compliance with licensing regulations. So for centers with lower ratios, here are some things that you should consider. While centers cannot charge families on subsidy more than they charge private pay parents, centers can continue to charge families for the difference between the state maximum rates and their private pay rates. And while centers and schools must remain in compliance with licensing and funding requirements, they can make shifts in their ratios as needed. And so you just need to confirm these with your local leads and the Better Beginnings team to make sure you're within the minimum licensing requirements for your ratios. So that's a way that we are trying to offset some of the additional strain and added cost, because we know that if you have 4 in a classroom versus 5, and that's the requirement for ratio, that adds up into additional funds that you would have to pay. And given this decrease in the amount of funds that you have available, we are trying to assist you with offsetting some of that burden. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so let's talk about the weekly payment timeline. So we are making payments now on a weekly basis. So everything that had been done up to September 30th was paid on a daily billing. So you were able to submit your payments or your request for payments on the 29th or on the 30th for the 29th, and we would pay those the next day. What we are doing now is we are paying on a weekly basis. So between Friday, November or October 3rd at 4 p.m. to Monday, October 6th, 11:59 p.m. Remember, we opened back up the portal on Friday, October 3rd at 4 p.m. And you had from that time till Monday, October 6th at 11:59 to submit any billing you had for September, as well as any billing for October 1st through 3rd. So all of those are currently in process, and we're hoping that those payments will be received to you and processed by this Friday, October 10th. And we're wanting to have both the regular payments to you as well based on the new rates, and then also have the quality payments to you at that same time. So everything that you submitted billing for by that Monday at 11:59 p.m. is going to be processed now. So anything that is September, October 1st through 3rd, or the week of October 6th through 10th that happens between Tuesday, which would have been today, and Friday, October 10th at 11:59 p.m. is going to be processed by the following Friday, October 17th. So everything that you do this week, you can continue to submit payment requests in on a daily basis. We are reviewing those and getting all the information together on those so that we can validate and verify. And then those will be submitted for payment in the following week and paid to you by that Friday, October 17th. And then we will follow that same process every week thereafter. In the month of October, you will continue to receive those quality enhancement payments that will be in addition to your other payments that you have on the new state rates. But those again will fall off after October 31st, effective November 1st. Next slide. So let's talk about some next steps that we have going on. So OEC is going to continue to provide support to you providers and to our families based on feedback that we receive. We get lots of emails, lots of information, and we are keeping track of all of that and trying to be responsible for receiving all of that information and trying to help that to support some of the decisions we have to make. You providers will continue to be responsible for tracking and collecting the co-payments for the families that you serve. You will continue to receive those and keep all of that information. Providers will submit for payment for services each Friday at 11:59 p.m. for payment to be processed by the following Friday. OEC is going to issue quality enhancement payments to providers through October, and we will continue to try to support you in the best way we can, both our families and our providers, as you navigate changes. Okay, next slide. All right, so if you have any questions ever with anything that happens, you're more than welcome to call the main line 501-682-8947, or you can also email the oec.familysupport, all one word, at ade.arkansas.gov. That way you can send us any information that you have, any question that you have. We will answer those questions to the best of our ability. We will take your feedback and try to keep that and report all that to the policy leaders that are helping to make these decisions. We really value the support that you provide, and we know that you play a key role in ensuring high quality, sustainable childcare in our state. We know that this has been a little bumpy ride. We know that it's been difficult to swallow when we've had so many years of I like to call it, say it's the fat versus the lean. We've had so many years of increased funding support from various pots of money that we no longer have available. And so we recognize that this is difficult, but we are trying to work through in the best way we can to make a difficult situation as palatable as possible. And so we want to continue to partner with you to ensure that we are providing as high quality childcare as we have possible. And you all are the ones that set that standard for high quality care within the state. And so we appreciate you as providers being able to do that for our families and continue to set that standard for high quality. All right. I think that's what we have for today. Our next provider call is going to be on November 4th at 12 p.m. So we look forward to talking with you all then. Again, if we have any changes to anything that's going on, any updates on when our funding is going to be provided through our continuing resolution, if that comes out, we will make sure to keep everyone aware. If there's any additional things that happen as far as changes, we will make everyone aware, keep abreast with everything that's going on. We'll be reaching out to you. Thank you so much for your time and your support. You all have a great day.